So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Prelims Powerplay. In this lecture series, we cover the entire year's important current affairs. And we have divided all these important current affairs from the past 1 year's newspaper into subjects. And we cover each and every subject one by one so that it becomes easier for you to revise. Now, this lecture series would also come with notes and practice MCQs. So I would sincerely advise you to do that, because if you'll follow this Prelims Powerplay lecture series, then, well, you would have covered all the important news items that have a high probability of featuring in your prelims exam this year. And prelims, well, it's round the corner. Not much time is left. Therefore, this lecture series is of extreme importance for you guys. Therefore, follow it diligently. Now, like I said before, that we will distribute all these important news items, all these important topics from the past 1 year's newspaper into subjects. And we will cover each and every subject one by one. Well, if you have been following this lecture series for quite some time now, well, you know that we have started with economics. So we will continue with economics, and once we are done with economics, we will cover other subjects as well. Okay. Now, within economics, or we had divided economics into different subtopics also. Currently, we are discussing the subtopic of budget. So the previous lecture was related to all the important news items with respect to budget. We are going to continue with that. Okay, and today we will finish with budget. Clear? Now, what are the 4 topics that we shall cover today in the budget section? Okay, number 1 would be the promises made in this year's budget with respect to Make in India. So what announcements were made with respect to Make in India? Number 2 would be key takeaways from the budget. There shall be 5 key takeaways from this year's budget that the Indian Express and the Hindu newspaper both wrote about. So we'll talk about those 5 key takeaways from budget. Then we'll also talk about economic survey as well, because that is also an important document. So 5 key takeaways, not 5, important key takeaways from economic survey. And then in the end, we'll talk about the issue called climate finance taxonomy. What does that mean? What is climate finance taxonomy? Why is it important? Why did Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji made certain announcements with respect to that? We'll talk about those issues as well. Okay, so let's straight away dive into the lecture because time is of the essence. So we'll start with topic number 1, that is Make in India in budget. Now the thing is that Government of India wants to make in India. What does that mean? Well, we want to grow through manufacturing sector. We want all the different manufacturers of the world to set up their factories in India. Because if all the global manufacturers of the world would set up their factories in India, what would happen? Well, they would bring in a lot of investment. That would be a benefit for India. They would give a lot of jobs because those factories would employ people. So it would generate gainful employment for India. Third, India's GDP is also going to get boosted, right? We are basically following the China model because China also had the advantage of surplus labor. India also has the advantage of surplus labor. Why not utilize that labor to grow our economy? China thought that. Therefore, China became the manufacturing hub of the world. Many factories were set up from all over the world into China. It gave Chinese people employment and China grew. India wants to follow a similar example, right? Therefore, in 2014, we launched Make in India program. Okay, so it was basically an invitation to all the global manufacturers of the world to come set up their factories in India. Prime Minister from Red Fort had announced, he used this phrase basically, come make in India. That was basically an open invitation to all manufacturers across the world, right? Now, Make in India has been the flagship program for Government of India for quite some time now, right? Now, in this year's budget, Government of India made certain announcements with respect to Make in India. Okay, so we'll talk about those announcements. Now, first, let's talk about the aims of Make in India program. Okay, as per government's website. So, on government's website, government has written 5 aims that they are going to fulfill through this Make in India program. Okay, let's talk about them. Number 1 is facilitate investment in India, especially foreign investment. Because if global manufacturers are going to come to India, well, they will bring in investment. We need to facilitate that investment. So that is objective number 1. Then We would want to invite those manufacturers who basically manufacture innovative products so that science and technology innovation boost in India. So foster innovation. Okay. Then skill development. Because why would those global manufacturers of the world would want to come to India if they find that Indian workers are not skilled enough to work in their factories? They would go to China then. Therefore, India needs to create a big pool of skilled workforce, right? So this would be another aim. Then all these global manufacturers fear that they manufacture innovative products. What if their innovation, their idea is stolen in India? Therefore, India requires a strong intellectual property rights regime. So, Government of India through Make in India will focus on that so that foreign manufacturers should feel secure that their technology won't be stolen in India. Their intellectual property rights shall be protected. Okay. And in the end, what other way we can attract foreign manufacturers? Well, we are going to provide them with world-class infrastructure. World-class infrastructure is important. Why? Well, simply put, why would foreign manufacturers want to come to India if there is not enough urban housing, water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, good network of roads? Why would they want to come to India then? Therefore, India wants to build world-class infrastructure where the type of infrastructure these manufacturers won't find anywhere in the world. So they would be more attracted to come to India, right? So manufacturing infrastructure. Now, on that website, on Government of India's website, Government of India has also laid out 4 ways through which these aims shall be fulfilled. What are those 4 ways? How to achieve those aims? First of all, Government of India would want to enter or influence the economy to enter new processes, new technologies, new processes of manufacturing. Then build new infrastructure. We have talked about it. Entering new manufacturing sectors. Okay. For example, sectors or industries that were not that popular in India, for example, technical textiles and all, would be made popular so that factories for those industries are also set up in India, right? And new mindset for public private partnership, because government and private players have to join hands if they really want to make India a new manufacturing superpower. Clear? So these are the 2 things that we have covered as per government's website, and that is all you need to know as far as Make in India is concerned. It's an old program. But what announcements were made with respect to Make in India or to promote Make in India in this year's budget? So let's talk about that quickly. Okay. So first of all, government launched National Manufacturing Mission. This National Manufacturing Mission, as the name suggests, would focus on making India the manufacturing hub of the world, like China. Okay, because nowadays people are moving away from China and they're searching for alternatives. What if India is that alternative? India would really gain out of that. Okay, now for National Manufacturing Mission, government will provide policy support. Okay, government will provide rules and regulations. Government will create a roadmap. Okay, and government will also basically provide a monitoring framework. That framework will allow government to monitor the performance of different ministries, different departments, different state governments, how they are performing with respect to Make in India. So you need a scale for that, a measuring rod for that. That is the monitoring framework. Okay. So under National Manufacturing Mission, these things would be done by the government. And government has outlined that through this National Manufacturing Mission, we will basically focus on 5 areas. Okay. 5 sectors. What are those 5 sectors or 5 areas? First of all, number one priority would be to make rules and regulations with respect to business in India so easy that ease of doing business in India increases, cost of doing business in India declines. Because if it is not easy to do business in India, if the cost of doing business in India is high, why would foreign manufacturers want to come to India? Right? So we'll focus on this. Then, like I said before, we need skilled workforce. So we will basically work towards future ready workforce for in-demand jobs. Jobs that are in demand, we will provide skills for that so that we have a good pool of skilled workforce. Right? Third would be special focus on MSME sector. When we talk about national manufacturing mission, many people assume that we are going to favor large manufacturers, big corporate companies. But no, government has made it clear that it would focus on micro, small and medium enterprises because they are the backbone of India's manufacturing sector. So we would want to make this MSME sector more vibrant and dynamic, and government of India has made certain announcements for them. Then fourth would be ensuring availability of technology. Okay. And fifth would be manufacturing of quality products. You see, India needs to create a name for itself that India manufactures quality products. Sure, China is the manufacturing hub of the world. But a few years back, well, the quality of Chinese product was not that well known. Or people used to say that Chinese products are not that quality or are not that or are not of good quality. Yes, China had that problematic image that Chinese products are of low quality, right? So that really harms your exports. If there is an image in the world that your country manufactures low quality products, that would create problems, right? Exports would decline because of that. So India would work towards providing quality standards so that quality products are exported from India so that India is known all over the world for its quality. Only then people would place orders with India, export orders with India. India's exports would rise, jobs would increase, GDP would rise, and this national manufacturing mission would become successful. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, this is as far as national manufacturing mission is concerned. Now, what other announcements were made by Government of India? So let's talk about them quickly. With respect to Make in India, okay, in the budget. First of all, customs duty on import of critical minerals would be, well, there would be an exemption. The thing is, critical minerals are used as raw material for manufacturing of electric vehicle batteries, electronics, and many other things. So, if India wants to promote electronics manufacturing, electric vehicle manufacturing, well, it needs to help those manufacturers to import critical minerals easily without paying taxes. So, basic customs duty on critical minerals has been exempted. You don't have to pay it. Okay. Second, rectify inverted duty structure. Now, there are a few sectors which have this problem of inverted duty structure. Now, what is inverted duty structure? Hear me out carefully. Okay, let's suppose I manufacture this pen. Okay, now let's suppose I manufacture this pen. Now, to make this pen, I need raw material. Now, for this pen, the raw material is plastic. Now, let's suppose India does not produce plastic. So, for me, the manufacturer of this pen, I would have to import this raw material, right? Now, there are people in India who buy pens, right? There are people who buy pens. Now, some people buy pens from me, that is Indian manufacturers. Some people buy those pens from abroad. They import those pens, right? Now, if government of India really wants to help me so that I grow, if government of India wants to help Indian manufacturers, okay, so that more and more people buy from Indian manufacturers rather than importing these pens from abroad, then what should government of India do? Government of India should make this raw material import cheap, less costly, right? So, to help me, Government of India should reduce import duty on this plastic, and Government of India should increase import duty on pen so that it becomes cheap for me to import raw material, but becomes really expensive for me. I have to pay heavy tax if I buy finished pen from abroad. Now, what would happen? If there is high import duty on pen, then less people would import pen from abroad and buy directly from me. So I would be benefited, right? And by reducing import duty on plastic, well, I'll be easily able to import plastic from abroad, make these pens and sell in India. So this kind of thing really helps, well, Indian manufacturers. So what helps Indian manufacturers? Look closely, okay? Raw material On raw material, import duty should be less. On finished product, import duty should be high, so that it becomes difficult to import this finished product from abroad, but easier to import raw material from abroad, so that more and more Indians buy raw material, make this pen in India and sell it in India or export it, right? But what if government does the opposite? Raw material is expensive and finished product is cheap to import. Then this thing, if government does the opposite, well, this incentivizes the importers of finished products and it disadvantages, well, the manufacturers, because it becomes expensive for them to buy this raw material and they are facing heavy competition from imported pens, right? Now, this opposite thing is known as inverted duty structure. So, government will focus on rectifying this. That's what I mean by that. Okay. Then, capital goods, tools, machines required to manufacture mobiles and electric vehicles shall be exempted from custom duty. Good. Exempting basic custom duty on raw materials, components, consumables, or parts for the manufacture of ships. So, people who are in the shipping industry who manufacture ships, well, raw material for them should be, well, less costly. So, basic customs duty or import duty would be reduced on that. Then there are 4 other announcements. Reducing customs duty from 20 to 10% on carrier grade Ethernet switches. These are the switches that are used for making telecom hardware. Okay. So again, it's the similar thing, making raw material for telecom hardware industry cheap. Then new scheme that provides term loans up to 2 crores for 5 lakh first time entrepreneurs. Very good. Okay. Startup industry would get boosted. Focus on labor intensive industries. We have discussed this before in the previous lectures. There are 2 kinds of industries: labor intensive, capital intensive. Capital intensive rely on machines. Labor intensive rely more on laborers. Now, jobs are generated more by labor intensive industries, right? That is why government says that now we will focus more on labor intensive industries, because that would not only boost our GDP, it would also raise employment levels. Now, some of the examples of those labor intensive industries are footwear, leather, toy manufacturing, food processing. Government would pay special focus on this. And then there were certain announcements for MSME sector, which you can look at from the notes. Okay, government changed the classification criteria of MSME. Government made it easier for them to get loans through credit guarantee cover, customized credit cards, and all that. All right. So that is it as far as, well, manufacturing or make in India is concerned. Now, let's shift our focus to second topic of the day, which is key takeaways from this year's budget. Okay, now this is important. You see, all the experts, economists, well, newspapers, journalists, well, they all wanted to extract 5 major things that were the outcomes of this year's budget. Okay, 5 major outcomes of this year's budget. We shall call them 5 key takeaways that we need to take away from this budget. Or for you, UPSC aspirants, these are the 5 things about this year's budget that you have to remember. Okay, you have to remember. Now, what are those 5 key things? Let's discuss them one by one. Okay, 5 major takeaways. Number 1, government provided tax relief to middle class. We discussed this in the previous lecture. Government came out with new taxation regime. In that, government reduced tax burden on the middle class. Yes, exemption up to 12 lakh rupees per annum, or rebate up to 12 lakh rupees per annum. So that would reduce tax burden on the middle class. Now, why is government doing that? Why is government reducing its revenue? By reducing taxes, government is basically reducing its revenue. And government doesn't want to reduce its revenue because government has to be mindful of its fiscal deficit target. You remember what was fiscal deficit? Well, the difference between government's expenditure and government's receipts. This is fiscal deficit. the amount by which your expenditure exceeds your receipts. This is fiscal deficit. How does the government basically compensate for this extra expenditure? Government borrows. So higher your fiscal deficit, higher your borrowings, higher the debt on government, which is bad for the government. Government always wants to reduce this fiscal deficit. Okay. Now there are two ways of reducing this fiscal deficit. Either reduce your expenditure or increase your receipts. But by giving tax break to middle class, what the government is doing is government is reducing its receipts, thereby widening its expenditure. So government doesn't want to increase its fiscal deficit because fiscal deficit basically means increased debt on the government. But by giving tax relief to these people, government is reducing its receipts. Now that runs a risk of widening fiscal deficit. Unless the government reduces expenditure also, that runs the risk of widening fiscal deficit. But why did government still, despite knowing that this can widen fiscal deficit, this tax relief to middle class can widen fiscal deficit, why did government still decide to provide this relief, to the middle class? Well, for a very simple reason, government wanted to increase consumer spending. Okay, because now middle class will have less tax burden, they will have more money left with them, they will use that money to spend it on goods and services. Demand for goods and services would increase, factories would benefit, they would produce more and more goods and services to basically satiate this demand, and that would increase India's GDP, right? So to fire up consumer spending, consumer demand, government is basically providing this tax relief, because increased consumer spending would increase India's GDP. That is why government is running this risk of reduced revenue. Okay, this is number one takeaway. Number two takeaway is that despite providing this tax relief, government's fiscal deficit is not widening. Okay, yes, government reduced its receipts by giving this tax relief. Government reduced its receipts by 1 lakh crore by providing this tax relief. Still, government's fiscal deficit target is going to be achieved. It is going to be 4.4% of GDP. Okay, so as far as fiscal discipline is concerned, reducing fiscal deficit is concerned, government is on track despite reducing its receipts. Okay, so this is key takeaway number two, that fiscal discipline is intact. Now, third thing is, the question is, how is the government able to maintain its fiscal deficit discipline despite reducing its receipts? Surely, government must have reduced its expenditure also. And that is problematic because that reduction is coming from capex, capital expenditure. And reducing capital expenditure is bad. Why? Well, capital expenditure is growth boosting expenditure. It boosts growth. Other expenditure by the government like subsidies, salaries, pensions, interest payments, all of this is categorized in revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure, but capital expenditure like building roads, bridges, infrastructure, development expenditure, this is good. But to maintain fiscal discipline, government had to reduce capital expenditure. So this time around, government chose boosting consumer demand through tax relief over reduction over capital expenditure. So government chose tax relief over capital expenditure. So we had to reduce capital expenditure or we wouldn't have achieved our fiscal deficit target. Okay, so this is the only bad news from these 5 key takeaways. The fourth and fifth key takeaways are very simple. Fourth is government will focus more on employment generation, and like we discussed in the previous topic also, Make in India topic, this time around government is focusing more on labor intensive industries, because labor intensive industries not only boost economy, they also boost jobs. And fifth is government is going to simplify rules and regulations so that it becomes easier to do business in India. That would mean more and more startups and more foreign companies would want to come to India. They would establish businesses in India. India will grow, right? So, regulatory reforms. All right, that's all you need to know as far as this key takeaways from budget are concerned. Now let's shift to topic number 3 for today, and that is key takeaways from economic survey. Now listen carefully. Economic survey, like budget, is also an important document. To know a few things about economic survey. Every year budget is presented on the 1st of February, right? But just day before the presentation of budget, Government of India Finance Ministry also releases economic survey. Now budget is full of announcements with respect to what the government will do. Okay, but economic survey is full of hard data as to how the economy has performed so far in the past year and what future lies ahead of the Indian economy. Okay, so basically budget is all about government's agenda, but economic survey is a basic report of how the Indian economy is doing, right? That is why economic survey is also important for all economists, but not just economists, for us UPSC aspirants as well. Data or questions might be extracted from economic survey and they might feature in your prelims examination this year. Okay, so what are the key takeaways of economic survey? Now, before jumping into key takeaways, let me also tell you a few more facts about economic survey. First of all, you need to know that economic survey is written by Chief Economic Advisor to India. Okay, and this entire document is published by Department of Economic Affairs, which is under Ministry of Finance. So it is published by Department of Economic Affairs, but it is authored by, Chief Economic Advisor. And it is one day prior to the presentation of budget. These are the facts that you need to know. Okay, basic trivia. Now let's talk about the key highlights of economic survey, or the key facts, or the key from economic survey. Okay, now key takeaways from economic survey. First of all, economic survey cited that the global economy is currently suffering from two major concerns. Okay, global economy is not doing well. Okay, now what are those two major concerns? First of all, with the rise of Donald Trump and with the rise of tariffs, we all have them. Trade protectionism has increased. With the rise of tariff regime, free trade, which was the mandate of WTO wanted to create free trade like conditions, right? Free trade is a casualty now. Free trade is dead. Now all countries, because Donald Trump has started this, all countries are now involved in this tariff war like situation. Free trade is a casualty. Now global trade is suffering. Global investments are suffering. So global economy is not doing well because of these actions. Okay, not just by Donald Trump, by many other countries, but overall economic survey says that trade protectionism is on the rise, and because of that, global trade and global investments are a casualty. And India, because Indian economy is connected to the global economy, therefore India might suffer because of this. The second problem is China is too dominant as the global manufacturing superpower. Okay, it is too dominant. The entire world relies too much on China. Too much. Now that is a problem. By too much we mean that 1/3 of all goods and services that are manufactured in 1 year are manufactured in China. 1/3 of all goods. Okay, China is rank 1 when it comes to manufacturing. The next 10 countries, if you add their manufacturing output, then too it is not equal to that of China. Okay, the world's over reliance, too much dependence on China is also a problem, because if China decides to basically penalize any economy, attack any economy, it can stop the supply of goods and services to that country, and that country will suffer because that country is over dependent on China. Too many supply chains are rooted from China. Now the good news is economic survey says that the world has become aware of this situation, and that is why they are shifting their supply chains away from China, and India can take advantage from that. That is why we want Make in India, by the way. Nonetheless, this is a problem. Now these are the two major concerns as far as the global economy is concerned. Now economic survey talks about Indian economy, domestic economy. So here are a few facts. Economic survey says the GDP growth rate for financial year 2024-25 is going to be 6.4%. Okay. Private financial consumption expenditure, PFCE. Private financial consumption expenditure, well, expenditure done by people like you and me for buying consumer goods. That is what the government of India tried to fire up by giving tax break, right? So economic survey says that private financial consumption expenditure is going to rise. Good news. Gross value added has surpassed pre-pandemic trend. Good news for the Indian economy. So Indian economy is doing fairly well. It also says that Indian economy faces a threat, and that is the threat of inflation. But inflation is moderating. It is declining. And the reason for that is decline in core inflation. Now, for some of you who do not know what core inflation is, so core inflation is non-food, non-fuel inflation. Non-food, non-fuel inflation is core inflation. So if you remove food items, if you remove fuel items, then is there inflation? That is core inflation. So core inflation is moderating, and that is good news for overall inflation. But economic survey warns that still the risk of food inflation looms large. Okay. The third thing that the economic survey says is that as far as employment situation is concerned, all the metrics, all the measuring tools of employment are doing well. Worker population ratio is doing well. Labor force participation rate is doing well. Okay, it has increased. Unemployment rate has decreased. And this data comes from periodic labor force survey for 2020-23. So India is doing well as far as employment is also concerned. This economic survey basically gave advice to the government. It says that the economy is doing well, domestic economy, though the global economy is suffering. But domestic economy is, yet, if you wanted to do even better, then do following things. Okay, deregulate, simplify rules and regulations for the businesses, and make the business environment more enterprise friendly. That's all. That's what economic survey said as far as Indian economy and global economy is concerned, and those are the two key takeaways from economic survey. All right, okay. Let's quickly finish this topic also, and let's quickly jump to topic number 4, which is climate finance taxonomy. Now, this year's budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji also made certain announcements with respect to climate finance taxonomy. You see, all the countries of the world are fighting against climate change. We all are fighting against climate change. Now, to fight against climate change, we need money, right? We need finance, money to basically adapt, mitigate, shift to green technologies. For all these things, we need money. Now, that money is known as climate finance. Now, there are many foreign investors in the world who are ready to provide this climate finance to different countries so that they can transition to a more environment friendly economy. Okay, they invest in green bonds. We have talked about sovereign green bonds, right? They invest in sustainable bonds. So foreign investors are ready to provide this green finance to different countries to transition to a more environment friendly economy. But the thing is, with countries like India and many other developing countries, foreign investors complain that when they provide money to countries like India, they don't know where this money is going. And even if they know where this money is going, they don't know what impact their money has had in reducing greenhouse gases. Right? They don't know whether their money has really fought against climate change or not. Right? And the reason for that is that India does not have proper categorization of different industries. Okay, there are some industries which are heavily polluting. There are some industries which are light polluting. There are some industries which do not pollute at all. And there are some industries which not only not pollute, but they also reduce greenhouse gases. Now, this is a proper categorization. India lacks this proper categorization. That is why it is difficult to allocate money from green bonds. Should you invest in fourth category or third category, Of course, you won't invest in first category, but what is better? Zero polluting industries or zero polluting plus greenhouse gas reducing? I mean, you need this categorization for your money to go in the right place. Now, India does not have this categorization. Now, the process of categorization is taxonomy. Taxonomy means you have proper categories for this. Now, climate finance taxonomy, that means which money should go where, is lacking in India. And that is why Government of India has said that we will work towards it so that foreign investors feel secure to invest in India. More green finance comes to India and India quickly transitions to an environment friendly economy. All right, this is what it is. Climate finance taxonomy is a system that classifies which parts of the economy may be marketed as sustainable and which non sustainable. The goal for this taxonomy is to set standards for classifying climate related financial instruments. Okay, green bonds. Where will the money collected by green bonds go? For that, you need different categories so that you'll say money from green bonds will go to category 1 and category 2. This also helps guide investors and banks in directing trillions in climate finance towards green transition. Okay. Now, the purpose is very simple: set clear goals, targets to fight against climate change, will support inflow of green finance into India. And that is all. Okay. One more thing. What is the potential of green finance in India? International Finance Corporation says that India can generate 3.1 trillion till 2030 when it comes to climate finance. So India can generate that much of money. And maximum amount of money for India will go towards electric vehicle segment, because electric vehicle segment has huge potential in India for climate finance. All right, that would be all. And with that, we conclude today's lecture, and with that, we also conclude the topic of budget. Now, please do not forget to revise all these things from the notes provided to you on our Telegram channel and also the MCQs. Revision from notes and practicing MCQs is really important for your prelims examination this year. So please do not forget to do that. And that would be all. I hope this lecture also added value to your preparation. I'm sure it added value to your preparation, but it would add more value if you're consistent and diligent with it. So please be consistent and diligent. And I would be signing off with the promise of seeing you again with another set of topics from economics in our lecture series called Prelims Powerplay. Thank you, everyone.